All right, welcome back for another episode of Carnivore Trades. Today is Friday, June 14th, 2023. If you're not done so already, please give the video a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com for swing trading alerts and analysis. Anyways, let's get into it today. So markets here, a little bit of, I don't want to really call it a gap and crap. We were only down 28 cents on the spiders. Q's down 8 cents. But we did have some things fading a little bit off the highs here. After the gap higher open, really we gapped up again, kind of on thin air again, you know, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gaps in a row. And you take a look at, you know, some of these kind of technicals here. SPY completely opening outside of its daily Bollinger Band. Take a look at the Q's. That finished outside of its Bollinger Band. Take a look how high. I mean, we were up at 382.86 at one point. Your BB, top BB here is at 377.91, and we were at basically 380. We were like $5 outside of that band. Another thing looking at here is the NQ, and just another kind of technical indicator here, the RSI on the 4-hour. If we go back to, we have to go back to the February FOMC before we were that extended there, and that gave us a good correction there, about 1,200 points. 12.9 down to 11.8, so 1,200 points there. And you can see it's coming in sharply now. So market's just getting really extended here. Some of the high flyers did come in a little bit, Nvidia being one of them, down 1% after that huge gap up, pierced 475. Then really just, take a look intraday, gap up, rallied for the first hour, and then really kind of a controlled fade all day long here. It is OPEX week next week, so some of this may be getting started early here. A lot of calls in the system now. They've been roasting the puts for a while, and markets here, again, just based on those technicals I just showed you here, probably need to cool off. I thought, and I talked to you about this on Wednesday, I would have thought that we would need to cool off Thursday, and then we could have some type of pump today. But we really pumped yesterday, and then we tried to pump this morning, and then came back in here. By the way, the Gamma Boys, they got blown out yesterday, but they won today. Take a look at that 45.05 close. That's where really all the Gamma was sitting here, and they tried to, they tried to squeeze them up early in the day, and then we came back in and just really kind of just grinded down into that area, and they really just kind of walked it down all day long here. The Dow was positive. We did have bank earnings. A lot of that was UNH getting a huge bid, up 7.25. So UNH coming out of the basement there, really needed it. I mean, you're at 52-week lows there yesterday, so nice pump there for UNH. And then the banks here, that contributed to some weakness, right? JP Morgan had great earnings, but finished up 60 basis points, but not the greatest, kind of price action. A little bit of a buy the rumor, sell the news. On volume, Citigroup. We talked about this wedge yesterday. That was a gap and crap, down 4% there. And I mean, you engulfed the last 4 days and negated this whole gap, and really held that wedge there. So Citigroup in a little bit of trouble here. You don't want to see it break this trend line. Goldman, that gapped up and came back in as well. Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, pretty good gap there on Wells, coming back inside of that little wedge pattern there. So banks, if we look at the XLF, engulfing reversal of the last 2 days. And again, we said 34.50 would be good resistance. That's where it was. We basically touched our weekly trend line, and we pulled back off of that. Still, it's still coming off the lows here. But again, that was something that helped pull the market in. But the Dow did outperform because of UNH, Goldman, and UNH and JPM being up helped out with that. Now, the big laggard on the day, big loser, was Russell 2000. That was down really all day long. Did not gap up with the rest of the market. KRE was a little bit of a gap and crap, finished down 2%, rejecting at that 100 moving average, and obviously lots of regionals in the Russell. And here's the thing with the Russell too. It's had a nice pop, but they did defend that weekly red bar high. So 191.74, that got closed below. So bears did show up a little bit here with the Russell, and we rejected that 100 MA. So I know a lot of people are looking for small caps to be the next runner, but this is telling me they're not ready yet. So that red bar did hold, and we'll see what we get next week. Again, it is OPEX week, so let's be prepared for that. Markets have had a huge run. If there's a time for them to correct, it might be now. SPX, I'm going to take a look at these trend lines here. We've been talking about these two. So this one going back to March, That's kind of your medium. So you got kind of short, medium, and long term, right? So this is a very steep trend line. This should, I would think, break at some point soon. It's very steep, and we're basically into that level. So the high of the day here today was actually made up to 45.27, but we closed below this pivot here. And again, you got a lot of chop right in this area that was rejected previously last year, and we closed below that pivot high. But just very extended outside of the Bollinger Band on the daily. Overbought. We talked about the RSI. There's the 20 moving average. So if you break that next obvious area, look, it coincides with the 50 moving average, this trend line right here. So it's all lining up here, and the charts tend to do this. And then if you end up getting through that, obviously your bigger, longer term trend line is way down here, the yellow trend line, and that connects the October lows with the March lows. And right now it sits at 4,100, but obviously that's a ways away. We don't need to talk about that right now. But right here, short term, a little bit of a pullback there. On the day, SPX ending down 10 basis points. Nothing crazy. We'll see what we get going into next week. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gaps in a row. Markets look a little tired here. Triple Qs. Again, we talked about the daily BB. We went up right into this level here around that 380 handle. Pivot low, little chop, breakdown. There's your resistance zone. I know a lot of you guys like to use the 786 instead of the 75, but you can see if we use the 786, it's actually right about there. So we kind of closed right in that area there on the triple Qs for the weekly. But again, until you really do some damage here, you got to take out this 20 moving average. We could even put a trend line. We could even say there's a trend line right here. Until we do some damage to those, it's still in an uptrend and still intact. But you take that out, then you go to the 50, which coincides with this, and then you go down to the purple trend line. So pretty simple there. Kind of looks just like the spiders there. But again, Q's coming in, NVIDIA coming in pretty sharply. AMD, by the way, that did finish green, but take a look at that 117 rejection. That is not a fake print, by the way, on AMD. Big pump in the morning and then a pretty sharp fade. Closed up just 2 cents, but that 117 area has been rejected again. So it's telling me there's sellers sitting there. So if this is going to move higher, it's probably going to need to consolidate to get through that. But obviously that did take down the semis a little bit, which we'll talk about in a second. Dow, that held up today. Again, we talked about that. That was up a little bit more than 1/3%, going right into this pivot. If this bakes in the oven a little bit longer, this can go up and test 348. That's really all I've got for it right now, but Dow holding up okay. Again, JP Morgan and UNH accounting for a lot of that today. Russell, we already talked about. Again, watch 191.74. Weekly close, that's still the big level there. If we start to head lower, we'll look for that 20 moving average here, but right now, it did pull back in, and the bears defended that level, so we'll respect it. Semiconductors, again, a little bit of a gap and crap, a little bit of uptick in volume, nothing crazy, no real chart damage. And I believe we made a new all-time high. So we did make a new all-time high, piercing double top. We'll see how that behaves next week. Again, still kind of overbought. I know that we had this kind of pullback here, but in relative terms here, you're going from 119 to 151 in less than a month, really, or a month. Typically, conventional wisdom says that you need to consolidate a little bit more before you push higher. So that's probably why we've pulled back in here. But either way, semiconductors holding up. But again, a little bit of a gap and crap. NVIDIA, I'm very interested to see where that closes next Friday for OPEX. Like you go on Twitter, and all this morning and all yesterday morning, it was nothing but NVIDIA 500, NVIDIA 550, NVIDIA 600. So that tells me there's a lot of calls being bought here, and wouldn't be surprising to see that come in. But anyways, IGV, that did finish green on the day, so up 24 cents. That held up okay. This is still hanging in there just fine. This is actually one of the stronger tech charts right now. Little consolidation there. I thought it would need to do a little bit more, but it had a nice pump here, and we closed above this pivot. So that's a good sign there for the IGV. And then you have this pivot right here at 367, not that far away. If you look on kind of the daily here, you can see right there. So there is some resistance here, but not a terrible pattern. Little short term overbought, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green days in a row. Gap. But IGV holding up. And we'll respect it, of course. Dow Transport's a little bit lower here today, so no confirmation above this pivot here, but support should be here now. If this is strong and this is a good breakout, this should be support now. So 15.6 That should be a level to watch. 20 moving average up sloping. If it breaks that, then we can talk about maybe back down to 15, 15.2. But until then, it's holding up. By the way, Delta, which reported yesterday, they did follow through a little bit to the downside there after that gap and crap. Yesterday, so down another 2.3, but held the 20 MA. If you break through that, it's back down to 42. So just watch for Delta there. All right. Let's get over to interest rates here. We'll start off with the 2-year as always. If I can get my chart up here. There we go. So there's a dollar 2-year hanging in there just fine. Okay, there we go. Pulled back, and then we had a nice reversal here today. So engulfing reversal, we did get data, University of Michigan consumer sentiment came in pretty inflationary. So consumer sentiment now showing an uptick in inflation. This is something that I've said is not going to go away. Yields seem to be respecting that. The market right now doesn't really care. But again, if this gets above 5.08, it's going to be a problem for the market. Even if yields go lower, I don't expect them to go that much lower or for really that long. Right now, the 2-year did bounce at this level. We talked about 4.6 yesterday. That's where it went, and it got a reversal. So we'll just leave it at that right now. 5s back above 4%. 10-year, trying to kind of hold this trend line. I still think it needs to do more consolidating before it can break back above this. But again, still holding up. And then the 30-year also getting a bid here right at those moving averages. So yields getting a pop here on the inflation data this morning. All right, so over to housing. XHB up another 36 basis points. What else is new? ITB up 1.22%, new all-time highs there. Overbought, extended, needs to pull back, but the trend is up, so you can't really say anything about it. VNQ stalling out at this trend line again. So that, again, that trend line remains to be an area. We'll continue to watch that going into next week. If it's strong, 84 should be support. If it breaks that, then it's definitely weak. XLF, we talked about 34.50. Is still resistance there. KRE following through off of that 100 moving average there. So that did continue to back off. KBE, which triggered a daily inverse head and shoulders yesterday, that got negated. However, on the weekly, you can still trigger it with a close above this 38.08 area. So actually 38.12. We'll just get it exact there. So a close above that can trigger that inverse head and shoulders on a weekly basis, but for now it is not in play. XBD continuing to push up here, but then reversed after the morning surge, down 1%. Nothing really problematic there. Again, we talked about 490 being the target, and that's where it is stalled out. All right, over to energy. So crude backed off of the 200, kind of like you would expect. You could even make a case there's a trend line kind of right here. We kind of went into. So a little bit of a convergence there too. So there's I know there's a lot of lines in here. It's kind of hard to see, but you've got this big trend line, then you've got this one, and then you've got the weekly red bar high, all in that area. We did close inside of this red bar, so no breakout for crude. Still inside bar, bear flag until proven otherwise. So crude still in that range. If it busts above that, then that's changed. I will say the energy stocks though, XLE did come in. Still inside bar, right back below this trend line. But some of the other ones are starting to get my interest here. XOP, that did back off. We told you 135 would be resistance. It's pretty sharp decline there. 50 MA rejection on the weekly, but this is shaping up a little bit better. I like that trend line breakout. And really the one that I really like is the OIH. I would love to see some consolidation, weekly consolidation, backing and filling. And this thing has got a big surge in the cards for it, but not until then. But some of these energy plays are starting to get attractive. Remember I told you guys about EQT a few weeks ago. I was upset that I didn't get in before this pop. Starting to come in, starting to look attractive here. Some of these oil and gas plays, they're going to be big plays in the second half of the year. And make sure you're ready because they're starting to get into these areas and timing-wise. But not quite there yet, but definitely a lot of these things are on my radar. Anyways, Nat gas here pulled back a little bit today. That was down just fractionally. It did come off the low, still inside of this channel here. They had the little thrust and now just kind of consolidating this up move. Weekly still looks good. Up move, little flag pattern there. So that looks like it's just baking in the oven right now. I don't see any real issues with it. Dollar index, Pierce of 100. This is another reason why I think the market probably pulls back here. I'm bearish bigger picture right now, the dollar, like medium term, I'm bearish dollar, because that's an impulsive move. But right now you're a little extended short term. And I do think they defend that psychological 100 handle at least once. It would be a little shocking if they didn't. What does that mean? Well, we probably go retest the 20 moving average. If you do that and you put in a lower high, it's going to go lower. But right now, a little oversold. Wouldn't be surprised to see a defense of that. Again, we're also going into OPEX week, so we could see this bounce back up as it's been beaten down as of late. All right, over to gold here. So gold fractionally lower with a fractionally higher dollar. Still has resistance here at 1970. Nothing wrong right now, nothing terrible. If it flags, it can go higher. I'm not really convinced of a pattern in either direction right now. Silver, there's a little pause day there after the big 1-2 thrust. We'll see how this behaves over the next couple of days or weeks. Don't chase it here, though. Again, like I've said, just like I was saying here with EQT, wrong chart. There we go. EQT. I was mad that I didn't get in here, but I didn't chase it because now, guess what? It's giving us a chance to get in. Silver might give you a chance to get in here. You can get a pullback. I'm getting a lot of questions, emails about silver. Did we miss the move? Is it over? Let it consolidate. Let it pull back. This can still fail. I mean, there's nothing to say. I mean, you're not above this breakdown bar yet. You're not above the weekly breakdown bar. So this can still, look at this big move we had up here, and it tried to consolidate it, and it came all the way back down. So don't chase it yet. Let it hang out, let it do its thing, and we'll let the charts tell us more. Platinum, inside day, just like you'd expect with silver. If that consolidates, it can push up to 100, or I should say 1,000. Not doing anything with that currently. Palladium, also a rejection at the 20-day moving average. That's the weakest of the four, although that is still getting attractive. I'd love to get that sub 1,100. Copper, inside day. That can still get to 4, maybe a pierce of 4. That's really all I have in the cards right now. Okay, Bitcoin, lastly, to wrap up here. Interesting price action, right? Outside move down, engulfing. Oh, man, did they just get everybody on board here? I don't know. It's very interesting because commercial money was short this entire time. They flipped long a week or two ago. And then we get a pump here. We get the, SEC news, Ripple yesterday, big move, just a huge move there. That's into some reasons. I'll cover Ripple right now because I know what people are going to ask. I covered it in the live stream yesterday for members, but you're into a lot of resistance here. This is a power move, but this is where you broke down. So anybody that's buying here is going to be a bag holder. They'll probably be a seller now. And it is pulling back there. So if it wants to go through there, it's going to need to consolidate. But again, like all those Bitcoin equities, Riot, let me zoom in here. That came in a little bit today. Marathon, MSTR. These charts aren't broken. There's nothing wrong with them just yet. But Bitcoin, again, continues to be, it's like lagging the Bitcoin equities. It's an interesting outside move there. This trend line here, let's just get rid of that. We don't need it. A little bit of a rejection there. Now, you know what I'm going to say, because you guys know me by now. This is still perfectly fine on the weekly. Up move. In fact, I actually like this better that it didn't break out yesterday, because I would prefer, I said this to you yesterday, I would prefer kind of a little bit more consolidation for a move higher. And that's what it's doing. So really it's just, this has been so strange lately. The weekly there's nothing wrong, and I'm going to go with the weekly because the weekly is more dominant, but it is very interesting that they just faded that hard that quickly, with all those Bitcoin equities running, and now with alts getting a bid here off of the XRP news. So right now, Bitcoin still upside bias right up into this area for one more pop. But very interesting price action there. I'm not doing anything with it at the moment because I don't know if they're trying to pull the rug, get everybody on board to pull the rug, or if it's actually going to go up here. But right now, weekly chart says it's okay. Okay, so lastly, back over SPX again. Next week, OPEX, right there's your red line. We'll watch how this behaves here. If you take out this trend line, then it's down here, and then, of course, down there. Those are bigger, longer-term levels. If we do continue up, 4,600 is your next stop. It's really that simple. Anyways, guys, going to wrap it up here. You guys take care. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com. Talk to you all tomorrow.